Before we begin, if you enjoy gripping true crime style narratives and want to be notified of more thrilling stories like this, please take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Your support helps bring these tales to life. Now, settle in, because what you are about to read is a fictional account that delves into the chilling depths of a crime that rocked a nation. This story is a testament to the shadows that can lurk within the human heart and the relentless pursuit of justice. The late summer heat of August 2007 clung to the city of Sacramento, California, a suffocating blanket that seemed to amplify the hum of the cicadas and the distant thrum of urban life. For most, it was a season of barbecues, lingering daylight, and the last vestiges of carefree living before the academic year began. For the residents of the quiet, tree-lined suburb of Riverbend, however, that tranquility was about to shatter irrevocably and violently. It began subtly, as all great horrors often do, not with a bang, but a whimper, or rather with an absence. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, a woman whose life revolved around meticulous routines and a keen eye for detail, noticed it first. Her next-door neighbor, Mr. Arthur Jenkins, a retired postal worker known for his unwavering punctuality and his prized rose garden, hadn't retrieved his morning newspaper. His porch light, usually extinguished by sunrise, still glowed faintly against the encroaching day. Eleanor, a woman who prided herself on being observant without being nosy, felt a prickle of unease. Arthur was, if nothing else, predictable. By midday, the unease had festered into genuine concern. Arthur's usually immaculate lawn remained unsprinkled. His beloved roses, already showing signs of the oppressive heat, drooped slightly. Eleanor, after a fruitless attempt to reach him by phone, decided to brave the heat and investigate. The air shimmered with heat haze as she walked the short distance to his front door, her sensible sandals crunching on the gravel path. She knocked firmly, then again, her knuckles rapping against the solid wood. Silence. Only the persistent buzz of a fly near the porch light answered her. A quick glance through the front window offered no clues, only the dim, familiar interior of Arthur's living room. Deciding against escalating her concern to the police immediately, Eleanor remembered the spare key Arthur kept under a ceramic garden gnome near his hydrangeas. It was a detail she had teased him about more than once, but one she now hoped would offer an innocent explanation. Her heart hammered a little as her fingers closed around the cool metal. The moment the door creaked open, a wave of cold hit her, an unnatural chill that seemed to defy the scorching outside air. And then the smell, a metallic tang, acrid and unmistakable, that turned Eleanor's stomach. It was the smell of blood. She took one step inside, her eyes struggling to adjust to the gloom. The hallway was dark, the curtains drawn. And there, at the foot of the stairs, was Arthur, or what was left of him. He lay sprawled, a grotesque tableau of crimson and white, his usually neat clothes disheveled, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at nothing. The sheer brutality of the scene was overwhelming. His throat was a gaping wound, a stark, jagged line across his neck, and the blood, oh God, the blood. It had pooled around him, a dark, viscous lake that stained the pristine carpet. Eleanor's scream was a raw, primal sound, tearing through the quiet afternoon, echoing off the walls of the silent house. Within minutes, the tranquil Riverbend street was transformed into a chaotic symphony of flashing lights and wailing sirens. Patrol cars, their blue and red strobes painting the houses with an eerie, rhythmic glow, converged on Arthur Jenkins' residence. Uniformed officers cordoned off the area, pushing back a gathering crowd of shocked neighbors, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. Detectives Sarah Collins and Mark Riley, seasoned veterans of the Sacramento Police Department's Homicide Division, were among the first to arrive. Collins, a woman in her late 30s with a sharp intellect and an unwavering gaze, surveyed the scene with a practiced, weary eye. Riley, her partner for the past 5 years, a burly man with a surprisingly gentle demeanor, stood beside her, his expression grim. They'd seen their share of horrors, but the sheer savagery of this murder was particularly jarring. Arthur Jenkins was an octogenarian, A man beloved by his community. Who would do this to him? And why? Looks like a professional job or someone who wanted to make a statement, Riley muttered, observing the meticulous nature of the wound, despite its brutality. No signs of forced entry. Whoever did this, Arthur either knew them or they were very, very good. Or both, Collins replied, her voice low. The spare key. Mrs. Vance mentioned it. No struggle in the living room. He was likely taken by surprise. She knelt carefully, her eyes scanning the periphery of the blood-soaked carpet. No immediate signs of robbery, either. His wallet is still in his back pocket. Valuables seem undisturbed. The forensic team, a swarm of quiet, methodical professionals, began their work, meticulously documenting every detail, every potential clue. They dusted for fingerprints, collected fibers, and photographed the scene from every conceivable angle. The air inside the house grew heavy with the smell of chemicals mixing with the lingering scent of death. The initial autopsy report, rushed through by a grim medical examiner, confirmed Collins and Riley's initial suspicions. Arthur Jenkins had been killed by a single, deep cut to the jugular, inflicted by a sharp, heavy blade. The weapon, however, was nowhere to be found. What was more perplexing was the lack of defensive wounds. Arthur, despite his age, was a spry man. The absence of a struggle suggested he either never saw his attacker coming, or he was incapacitated in some way before the fatal blow was delivered. It's not a robbery gone wrong, Collins stated emphatically, reviewing the report with Riley in their cramped office a few days later. And it's not a crime of passion. There's a cold, calculated precision to it. This was an execution. But for what? Riley mused, rubbing his temples. Arthur was a pillar of the community. No enemies, no shady dealings. Who would want him dead? The investigation quickly stalled. Without a clear motive, a weapon, or even a witness, they were grasping at straws. They interviewed every neighbor, every friend, every distant relative. They delved into Arthur's past, looking for any hidden skeletons, any old grudges. Nothing. He was, by all accounts, an ordinary man leading an extraordinary quiet life. The case went cold, a chilling reminder of the unknown lurking in the heart of their city. The initial shock began to fade, replaced by a lingering sense of unease, a quiet fear that permeated Riverbend. People started locking their doors earlier, checking their windows twice. The innocent summer air now carried a subtle, sinister undercurrent. 3 weeks later, the summer heat still persisted, but the news of Arthur Jenkins' murder had largely receded from the front pages, replaced by more immediate, less terrifying concerns. Then, on a Tuesday morning, a new scream echoed through another quiet Sacramento neighborhood, this time in the affluent district of Fair Oaks. Mr. David Chun, a successful architect in his late 40s, known for his modern designs and his vibrant family life, was found dead in his pristine, minimalist living room. The scene was eerily similar to Arthur Jenkins. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, and the same gruesome, precise cut to the throat. The perpetrator had gained access, dispatched their victim with brutal efficiency, and vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the cold, stark evidence of their deed. This time, however, there was a crucial difference. David Chun was not an octogenarian retiree. He was a man in the prime of his life, with a wife and 2 teenage children. His murder sent a different kind of shockwave through Sacramento. This wasn't an isolated incident targeting an elderly man. This was a pattern. Collins and Riley were back on the case, their faces grim, their expressions hardened by a renewed sense of urgency. The similarities were too striking to ignore. This isn't a coincidence, Mark, Collins said, her voice tight with a mixture of anger and dread as they walked through the sterile, yet blood-stained, Chan residence. This is our guy, and he's escalating. Riley knelt beside the victim, his eyes scanning the familiar scene. Same MO, Sarah. Same signature. The precision, the lack of struggle. It's chilling. And still no weapon. The forensic team worked tirelessly, but again the killer left little behind. A faint shoe print near the back door, too indistinct to be useful. A single, dark hair, too fragmented for DNA analysis. It was as if the killer was a phantom, moving through these lives, leaving only death in their wake. The media frenzy was immediate and intense. Local news channels ran continuous coverage, speculating wildly about a serial killer terrorizing Sacramento. The city council held emergency meetings, reassuring the public while simultaneously increasing police patrols. Parents kept their children indoors, and a palpable fear began to grip the entire metropolitan area. The police department, under immense pressure, released composite sketches based on vague descriptions from neighbors who claimed to have seen a suspicious figure near both crime scenes. A tall, slender individual, always wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt, their face obscured. The sketches, however, were generic, offering little concrete information. Collins and Riley pored over every detail, every potential link between Arthur Jenkins and David Chin. They were seemingly unconnected, different ages, different professions, different social circles. What tied them together? Was it random? Or was there a deeper, more sinister connection that they were missing? The lack of any apparent motive was the most frustrating aspect. No robbery, no sexual assault, no obvious revenge. It was a cold, calculated act of murder, seemingly for its own sake. The killer seemed to relish in the act, leaving behind a stark message of terror, but the message itself remained indecipherable. "Think, Sarah, think," Riley urged, gesturing at the sprawling whiteboard in their incident room, covered with photos of the victims, maps of the crime scenes, and a tangled web of inconclusive leads. "There has to be something. Connection. Pattern. We're missing something fundamental." Collins stared at the photos of the two deceased men, their faces now hauntingly familiar. Arthur Jenkins with his kind, elderly eyes. David Chun with his intelligent, determined gaze. Two lives brutally extinguished by the same unseen hand. The only commonality was the method, the precision, and the horrifying silence that followed each act. As the days turned into weeks, the fear in Sacramento intensified. Every rustle in the night, every unfamiliar car, became a source of suspicion. The city, once vibrant and bustling, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next whisper of dread, the next gruesome discovery that would signal the killer's return. Collins and Riley knew with a chilling certainty that it was only a matter of time. The crimson harvest had begun, and its true depths were yet to be revealed. The phantom killer was still out there, weaving a terrifying tapestry of fear, and the city braced itself for the next, inevitable chapter of terror. The autumn of 2007 settled over Sacramento, but the crisp air brought no relief to the city's burgeoning anxiety. The memory of Arthur Jenkins and David Chen's brutal murders still hung heavy, a pervasive fear that touched every corner of daily life. Children who once played freely in parks were now under constant adult supervision. Neighborhood watch groups, once a quaint civic endeavor, became a serious, often tense undertaking. The whispers of a serial killer had solidified into a chilling reality, and the Sacramento Police Department found itself under an unprecedented level of scrutiny and pressure. Detectives Collins and Riley were working around the clock, fueled by caffeine, frustration, and a growing sense of urgency. Their incident room, once sparsely populated, now hummed with the activity of dozens of officers and analysts. The whiteboard, now a sprawling canvas of interconnected timelines, victim profiles, and tantalizing but ultimately fruitless leads, was a testament to their efforts. But despite the resources poured into the investigation, the killer remained elusive, a ghost in the machine. Then, on a cold, blustery October evening, the phantom struck again. This time, the victim was Sarah Lindstrom, a vibrant 32-year-old high school English teacher, found in her modest apartment in the Arden Arcade area. Her body, discovered by a concerned colleague after she failed to show up for school, presented the same horrifying signature. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle, and the same precise, fatal cut to the throat. The discovery sent a fresh wave of panic through Sacramento. The killer was no longer targeting a specific demographic. An elderly man, a middle-aged architect, and now a young woman. The randomness was terrifying. It suggested a predator who chose victims without discernible pattern, or one whose pattern was so subtle, so deeply hidden, that it defied all conventional profiling. Collins stood in Sarah Lindstrom's apartment, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood and the faint scent of lavender, a stark contrast that made her stomach clench. The apartment was tidy, filled with books and personal touches, a life abruptly and brutally cut short. "He's adapting, Mark," she murmured, her gaze sweeping over the scene. "Or he's just showing us how utterly unpredictable he is." Riley, his usual robust confidence visibly shaken, nodded grimly. No immediate signs of anything linking her to the others. She taught at a local high school, volunteered at a homeless shelter. No dark secrets, no known enemies. He kicked at a loose floorboard near the kitchen, a frustrated gesture. "It's like he picks people at random. How do you catch a ghost that leaves no trail and seemingly has no motive?" The lack of a discernible motive continued to be the most maddening aspect of the case. With each victim, the police delved deeper into their lives, scrutinizing financial records, personal relationships, online activities. But Arthur Jenkins, David Chun, and Sarah Lindstrom remained disconnected, their lives weaving entirely separate threads until their abrupt, violent intersection. No one had reported any suspicious encounters, no threats, no grudges. The murders appeared to be entirely unprovoked, acts of pure, unadulterated malevolence. Public outcry reached a fever pitch. Town hall meetings were packed with terrified citizens demanding answers. The local media, now national, ran sensational headlines. "Sacramento's shadow killer," "The Butcher of California," pressure mounted on the mayor's office and the police chief, threatening to derail careers and erode public trust. A task force was formed, bringing in FBI profilers from Quantico, but even their expertise offered little in the way of concrete leads. The FBI's psychological profile described a highly intelligent, meticulously organized killer, likely a white male in his late 20s to early 40s, socially awkward but capable of blending in, possibly with a history of antisocial behavior. He was likely meticulous, deriving satisfaction not from the act of murder itself, but from the complete control he exerted over his victims and the subsequent chaos he sowed. He was dubbed by the media as the Faceless, for the lack of a clear identity and the way he seemingly evaporated after each attack. "He's probably enjoying this, all the fear and the media circus," Collins mused during a late-night session with Riley, staring at the blurred composite sketches that seemed to taunt them with their ambiguity. "He's playing a game and we're all the pawns." "But what's the game, Sarah?" Riley asked, slamming his fist gently on the table in frustration. "What's the end game? He's not leaving a calling card, not making demands, just death." The breakthrough, when it finally came, was tragically subtle, almost missed amidst the deluge of data. An analyst, poring over months of cell phone records around the crime scenes, noticed a peculiar anomaly. A single burner phone, purchased with cash at a gas station minimart outside the city, had pinged off towers in the vicinity of all three murders, within a specific time frame leading up to and immediately after the estimated time of death. The phone had then gone dark, only to resurface briefly near the next crime scene. It was a digital ghost, a breadcrumb left not by carelessness, but by an unseen pattern. "This is it," Collins exclaimed, her finger tracing the highlighted pings on the digital map. "This is our phantom's digital footprint. He's using these throwaway phones, probably cycling through them, but he's making one crucial mistake: he's activating them in the same geographical areas when he operates." The revelation, while significant, still didn't provide a name or a face, but it gave them something concrete to work with. They broadened their search, cross-referencing the burner phone data with surveillance footage from gas stations and convenience stores in the areas where the phones were purchased. It was a tedious, painstaking process, involving countless hours of reviewing grainy security footage. Weeks bled into months. The leaves turned from fiery red to brittle brown, falling like the hopes of the Sacramento residents. The murders had become less frequent, giving the city a deceptive sense of relief, but the underlying dread remained. Everyone knew the killer was still out there, just waiting. Then, A stroke of luck or perhaps a well-placed act of desperation. A clerk at a remote convenience store, reviewing old surveillance footage at the request of the task force, remembered a peculiar customer from several months prior. A man had come in late one night, purchased a burner phone, and paid entirely in small, crumpled bills. The clerk had found it odd, not suspicious, but memorable. He recalled the man's unusual eyes, a piercing, almost unnerving shade of light blue, and a small, distinctive scar above his left eyebrow. The footage was grainy, but it was enough. The man, obscured by the hood of his sweatshirt, briefly looked up at the camera. For a fleeting second, his face was visible. The light blue eyes, the scar. It wasn't a perfect image, but it was something concrete. The image was enhanced, circulated among law enforcement agencies across the state. A breakthrough. For the first time, they had a face, however blurry, to associate with the terror. The face belonged to a man named Arthur Bellamy. He was 38 years old, a former systems analyst for a now-defunct tech company, with no prior criminal record. He lived alone in a nondescript apartment complex on the outskirts of Sacramento, a man who seemed to exist on the fringes of society, leaving little trace. He had been laid off from his job 2 years prior and had, by all accounts, simply disappeared into the anonymity of the city. The discovery sent a jolt of grim excitement through the task force. A suspect, a name, a face. Finally, they had something tangible. But the information also raised more questions. What was his motive? What connected him to his victims? And why had he gone unnoticed for so long? Collins and Riley, armed with a search warrant, led the SWAT team to Bellamy's apartment in the dead of night. The approach was meticulous, silent, the air thick with anticipation. They breached the door with practiced efficiency, guns drawn, ready for anything. The apartment was dark, eerily quiet. It was sparsely furnished, meticulously clean, almost sterile. There were no signs of a struggle, no obvious evidence of a madman's lair. Just a chilling orderliness that spoke of a disturbed mind. But then, in the back of a closet, hidden behind a false panel, they found it. A collection, not of trophies in the traditional sense, but something far more disturbing. Photographs of his victims, taken days before their murders, from a distance, documenting their routines. Arthur Jenkins watering his roses. David Chun leaving for work. Sarah Lindstrom grading papers through her apartment window. Each photo was annotated with precise dates and times, a chilling chronicle of his surveillance. And beside the photographs, a chilling journal. Its pages were filled with neat, precise handwriting, detailing his thoughts, his plans, his twisted justifications. He wrote of the impurities in society, the weaknesses he felt compelled to purge. He saw himself as an agent of cleansing, a silent reaper, chosen to rid the world of those he deemed unworthy. He was particularly obsessed with what he perceived as societal decay, a personal crusade against the perceived moral failings of modern life. The journal revealed a deeply disturbed individual, a man who had felt increasingly alienated and resentful after losing his job and feeling disconnected from society. He saw his victims not as individuals, but as symbols of a world he felt had rejected him. The seemingly random nature of the victims was his ultimate act of control, a demonstration of his power to choose who lived and who died, without any discernible pattern that could be traced back to him. The most disturbing discovery, however, was a small, crudely drawn map tucked into the back of the journal. It outlined 4 more locations within the Sacramento area, each marked with a chilling red X. For more potential victims, meticulously chosen, their fates already sealed in his twisted mind. The horror of the discovery was palpable. They had caught him, but just in time. Bellamy wasn't in the apartment. He had vanished, once again, a ghost in the wind. But the evidence they found was overwhelming. The photographs, the journal, the burner phone pings, the security footage. They had their killer. The hunt was now on, with a clear target. Collins stared at the map, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and renewed terror. "He's still out there," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "And he has 4 more targets." The city of Sacramento, having endured months of uncertainty and fear, now faced a new challenge. They had a name, a face, and a terrifying glimpse into the mind of the man who had brought a crimson harvest to their streets. But he was still at large, a predator with a hit list, and the race against time had just begun. The shadow of fear had indeed lengthened, but for the first time, they knew whose shadow it was. The news of Arthur Bellamy's identification as the faceless killer exploded across national headlines. The blurry surveillance image, now enhanced and plastered everywhere, finally gave a face to the terror that had gripped Sacramento for months. The city, previously paralyzed by anonymous fear, now channeled its collective anxiety into a desperate hope for his capture. For Collins and Riley, it was a race against the clock, knowing Bellamy had a list of 4 more potential victims, their lives hanging precariously in the balance. The names on Bellamy's crudely drawn map were cross-referenced with public records and quickly identified. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a renowned historian at Sacramento State University. Mr. Samuel Hayes, a beloved high school basketball coach. Ms. Patricia O'Connell, a successful real estate agent. And Mr. Robert Maxwell, a local bookstore owner. All seemingly disparate individuals, but all, in Bellamy's twisted logic, were chosen for their perceived embodiment of societal failings or successes that he resented. Dr. Reed for her intellectual elitism. Mr. Hayes for his influence over impressionable youth. Ms. O'Connell for her material wealth. Mr. Maxwell for perpetuating what Bellamy considered trivial knowledge. The police immediately launched a massive protection detail. Each identified individual was placed under round-the-clock surveillance, their lives upended by the sudden, terrifying reality that they were marked for death. Dr. Reed, a stoic academic, initially scoffed at the idea, but the gravity of the situation soon settled in. Mr. Hayes, a jovial man, struggled to reconcile his community standing with being a target of such malevolence. Ms. O'Connell, fiercely independent, found the intrusion unbearable. Mr. Maxwell, a quiet, contemplative man, retreated into fear. Bellamy, however, was a phantom. His apartment had been meticulously wiped clean of any recent forensic evidence, indicating he had been preparing for this possibility. He had no credit cards, no digital footprint beyond the burner phones, and his car, a beat-up sedan, had vanished. He was a man who had consciously untethered himself from modern society, making him incredibly difficult to track. Days turned into a grueling week. The task force followed every lead, interviewed anyone who had ever known Bellamy, but the trail was cold. The pressure on Collins and Riley was immense. Every passing hour felt like a ticking bomb. The city held its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Then a flicker. A witness, an elderly woman in a remote gas station mini-mart 100 miles north of Sacramento, reported a man fitting Bellamy's description paying cash for gas and a new burner phone. She'd noticed his piercing blue eyes and the scar. He was moving, possibly planning his next attack further afield, or perhaps trying to escape the dragnet. He's on the move, but he's still following his pattern, Collins observed, studying the satellite images of the area. He's using burner phones, but he needs to buy them. He's meticulous, but he still needs to eat, to sleep, to fuel his vehicle. A statewide alert was issued, and every law enforcement agency was on high alert. Checkpoints were set up on major highways. The net was closing, but Bellamy was still a step ahead. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former colleague of Bellamy's, a man named Jeremy Finch, contacted the police after seeing Bellamy's face on the news. He recalled Bellamy's deep fascination with abandoned places, particularly old, disused industrial sites, remnants of a bygone era that Bellamy felt represented a purer, untainted past. Finch remembered Bellamy speaking fondly of an old, decommissioned sawmill deep in the vast Sierra Nevada foothills, a place he used to visit for solitude. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead they had. Collins and Riley, accompanied by a heavily armed tactical team, deployed to the remote, isolated location. The journey was arduous, winding through dense forest roads and ultimately requiring an off-road trek through thick undergrowth. The air was cold, damp, and eerily silent, broken only by the crunch of their boots and the rustle of fallen leaves. The sawmill, a hulking skeleton of rusted metal and decaying timber, loomed in the twilight. It was a place where shadows danced, and the wind whispered through broken windows like ghosts. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. "He's here," Collins murmured, her hand on her weapon, a sense of grim certainty settling over her. "This is his sanctuary." The tactical team moved with practiced precision, fanning out and slowly clearing the vast, dilapidated structure. Every creak of the old wood, every clank of loose metal, sent a jolt of adrenaline through the officers. The tension was suffocating. They knew Bellamy was dangerous, meticulous, and likely desperate. They found him in the heart of the sawmill, in a small, relatively intact office area. He was not hiding. He was sitting at a rickety old desk, illuminated by a single battery-powered lantern, surrounded by more notebooks. He was meticulously carving intricate symbols into a piece of wood, his light blue eyes, even in the dim light, burning with an unsettling intensity. He looked up as the team burst in, guns trained on him. There was no surprise, no fear in his eyes, only a chilling, almost serene acceptance. He slowly lowered the carving tool, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "I knew you would come," he said, his voice calm, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the chaos he had unleashed. "It was inevitable. I had completed my work here. Arthur Bellamy, you're under arrest for the murders of Arthur Jenkins, David Chen, Sarah Lindstrom, and countless other atrocities," Collins stated, her voice firm, unwavering. Bellamy simply nodded, his gaze unwavering. "The cleansing is never truly complete, but I have planted the seeds. Others will understand. Others will follow." The arrest was anticlimactic. No struggle, no chase. Just the quiet apprehension of a man who believed his twisted mission had been accomplished. He was cuffed and led out of the sawmill, the last echoes of his chilling words lingering in the cold, still air. The immediate aftermath of Bellamy's arrest brought a wave of immense relief to Sacramento. The news spread like wildfire, sparking celebrations and sighs of collective relief. The city that had lived under a cloud of fear for months could finally begin to heal. The four marked individuals, Dr. Reed, Mr. Hayes, Ms. O'Connell, and Mr. Maxwell, expressed profound gratitude, their lives saved by the tireless efforts of the police. Bellamy's trial was a national sensation. His journal, filled with his delusional manifestos and detailed plans, became key evidence. Psychologists and psychiatrists testified, painting a picture of a man suffering from severe antisocial personality disorder and a deeply ingrained persecution complex, coupled with narcissistic delusions of grandeur. He truly believed he was doing God's work, purging society of its perceived impurities. His calm, almost detached demeanor throughout the proceedings only served to underscore the chilling depths of his pathology. Despite attempts by his defense to argue for insanity, the overwhelming evidence of his premeditation, meticulous planning, and clear understanding of his actions, albeit twisted, led to a swift conviction. Arthur Bellamy was found guilty on all counts of murder and sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. For Collins and Riley, the conviction brought a sense of grim satisfaction, but also a lingering weight. They had caught their monster, but the scars of the Crimson Harvest would remain. They had seen firsthand the depths of human cruelty and the fragility of peace. In the years that followed, Sacramento slowly began to recover. The memory of the faceless killer faded into a grim chapter in the city's history, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. Neighborhoods that had once lived in fear gradually regained their vibrancy. But the experience left an indelible mark. People were more vigilant, more aware of the shadows that could lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. Collins and Riley continued their careers, forever changed by the case. The Crimson Harvest had tested their limits, pushed them to the brink, and forced them to confront the darkest aspects of humanity. They learned that evil could wear a mundane face, that terror could emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most dangerous monsters were those who believed they were doing good. The story of Arthur Bellamy served as a stark reminder. Even in the quietest corners of seemingly peaceful communities, the potential for darkness exists, waiting for an opportunity to unleash its terrifying harvest. And though justice had been served, the chilling echoes of the faceless would forever be a part of Sacramento's collective memory, a haunting testament to the price of fear and the relentless pursuit of truth.